Today is part 2 of our 3-part installation, and we're going to be talking about how to navigate the CBE compliance process. Now, some of you may be thinking that this webinar series is only for our certified small businesses. That is not true. We've designed the information so it's beneficial not just to small or certified businesses, but also to non-certified larger businesses that are doing business with Broward County who've won a contract. So my name is Donna Ann Knapp. I'm the Small Business Development Manager within the Office of Economic and Small Business Development. And I'm going to be primarily talking about the various touch points where you're going to be interacting with our office. So let's get started. The Office of Economic and Small Business Development is primarily comprised of 5 sections. The Small Business Development section is one of these 5 sections, and this unit is charged with implementing and administering Broward County's 4 small business programs. We've got 2 local small business programs, County Business Enterprise, or CBE, and the Small Business Enterprise, or SBE. And then we've got 2 federal disadvantaged business enterprise and airport concession disadvantaged business enterprise. Now, these 4 programs are monitored by our office, but for the purpose of today's webinar, we're going to be focusing on the larger of the 2 small business programs that are local to Broward County. So that's going to be the County Business Enterprise. Within the Small Business Development section, there are 2 primary groups. One is a certification group, and the other is compliance. The certification team is responsible for certifying and decertifying firms based on them meeting the eligibility requirements and continuing to meet them under the small business program. The compliance team is charged with reviewing project scope before it's even advertised to identify participation for small businesses that are certified that provide those services. The compliance team is also responsible for enforcing the program requirements. So we do both. It's not just enforcement, though. I want to caveat that by saying we're here to help. The first area in which we're going to interconnect is shortly after you're awarded your contract. The Office of Economic and Small Business Development will issue a vendor recognition letter, not just the successful prime or more than one prime if it's a multiple award. We also issue recognition letters to their CBE firms. Now, these recognition letters are a way of introducing our agency. There's always an instance where there's a brand new vendor doing business with Broward County for the first time, and this video will be particularly helpful for them. For those of you that are not winning your first contract with Broward County, we're hoping we'll share some tidbits that will be useful for you that you can use in your future contracts. But the recognition letter, aside from introducing OESBD, gives the prime vendor and the subcontractor a heads up as to what's required or will be required under their contract when interacting with our office. On the screen before you is a sample recognition letter that's sent to a prime vendor. That's pretty much the same format and layout that you'll see in every instance that we send one. It tells you who we are. It acknowledges that your contract was awarded either by the Director of Purchasing or by the Broward County Board of County Commissioners. It's going to reflect the names of all the CBE firms that, as a part of your response package, you submitted just before award. And just for some context, so you're aware, our office and the compliance team actually reviews the responses from each vendor that responds to a solicitation that the county posts. So we review every response, and at the time that we review it, we won't know who will be recommended for award, but we've reviewed your entire team. So we've determined that everyone you're proposing is eligible or ineligible, notified you accordingly, and you would have had 3 business days within which to fix any technical defects with your submission. And then there's a letter that goes to the purchasing division. So whoever wins or is awarded the contract, we've already reviewed and approved your team. The recognition letter also talks about reporting requirements that you'll need to submit to our office. These reports are called monthly utilization reports. We're going to talk about those in a little bit more detail in just a minute. The letter also gives you advance notification that we're going to need copies of subcontract agreements with all the CBE firms that are listed on the Prime's recognition letter. It indicates also what to do in the event that you need to make changes to your team, whether that means adding a new firm, terminating a firm, making a substitution, or modifying the team that you already have proposed. This is the second page of the Prime's recognition letter, and you'll see in the top left corner of my screen, the heading says it's a Prime recognition letter with subs. So it's possible for a Prime vendor to be CBE certified, because we're talking about the CBE program in today's session, and to also be the successful vendor. And if they're able to perform all the required services on the contract, then they themselves could perform all the required services and still meet the commitment. This letter, however, is for a vendor that has subs. If there were no subs, the Prime would still be listed as a CBE because they're the ones meeting the goal with their own forces. The letter also references the Business Opportunity Act. We did a deep dive yesterday, but just as a reminder, it tells the vendor that the act requires that CBE firms working under this contract, under their contract with the county, need to be paid within 15 calendar days of the Prime's receipt of payment from the county. That's referred to as the prompt payment requirement. It also gives the Prime a heads up that liquidated damages may be assessed for failure to meeting the commitment and failure to demonstrating good faith efforts. Now, these liquidated damages, or LDs, are not the same LDs that the Broward County project manager can assess for delays in performance and time. These are separate, so it is possible under a contract to have two different sets of LDs. These, however, are authorized by the Business Opportunity Act, so we're making you aware of it. However, it's not just, assigned or assessed willy-nilly. There has to be a reason that it is assessed. And we work with you throughout the project. So the idea is never to get to the point where you haven't made efforts to either become compliant based on our correspondence with you, or demonstrate that you genuinely have made efforts to meet your commitment. I'm going to go on to the next slide, and this has a sub recognition sample letter. So the previous slide was the Prime vendors recognition letter. This goes to each of the certified CBE firms that are subcontractors to the Prime vendor. It tells the sub that the contract has been awarded, the contract that the Prime has with the county was awarded, the date it was awarded, and that it was awarded either by the Director of Purchasing or the Broward County Board of County Commissioners. It also references the committed participation percentage based on the Prime vendor's submittal package, the letters of intent that we previously reviewed, so that both the Prime and the sub have been alerted to the fact that the contract is awarded and active, and OESBD will be monitoring it. Note that a separate letter is sent for each sub, and there is a notification in the sub's letter alerting them to the fact that we will be asking for a copy of the subcontract agreement. So that's a trigger for both the Prime and the sub to start having conversations and formalizing that agreement. This is a sample recognition letter. In this case, you'll see in the top left header, it says this one has WIP, which is the Workforce Investment Program. And this sample is intended to represent a Prime that's self-performing the entire contract. You'll see the layout is very similar to the first Prime letter that we shared with you. In this instance, however, it's a CBE reserve, which is a 100% goal that's awarded to a CBE Prime. So they're doing 100% of the services. If you look at the little table, it'll show 100%, and it'll be the Prime's name that appears there. This is a good point for me to interject and add that while OESBD's Small Business Development section reviews projects and assigns small business participation goals, it is possible for a contract to not have an assigned small business goal, but for the Workforce Investment Program or its counterpart, the Construction Apprenticeship Program, both of which are administered by the Economic Development section within OESBD, for them to apply. So it's possible to not have a goal, but still have WIP or CAP requirements. The layout of this letter, as I said, is very similar to the first. I'm going to go to the second page just so I can bring your attention to the language that's inserted. So if you look at the second and third paragraphs, it makes reference to our community partner, CareerSource Broward, and that's a trigger. The first time you would have heard about this is in your solicitation response package. There would have been an attestation form that you would have completed that says you will abide by the Workforce Investment Program requirements should you be awarded the contract. Well, it's coming back. And I'm going to turn it over to our Assistant Director, Maribel Feliciano, and she's going to talk to you a little bit more about the WIP and the CAP program. Before I do so, I want to show you the last page of the letter, and it holds true for the subs letter as well as the primes letter. And this is a tip for you. In the CC line of each of these letters, the first name in the CC line is usually the Broward County project manager's name. This is a tip for our certified firms. You don't have a direct agreement with Broward County, but if you're wondering who the Broward County project manager is, their name is listed there. Our assistant director is the next name. My name's usually there. For a letter that involves the Workforce Investment Program, WIP, or the Construction Apprenticeship Program, the Economic Development Manager's name will appear, and the last name on the CC line, and you'll know because of the title, will be the Small Business Development Specialist. That's the name of the specialist within our office who's monitoring your contract for compliance. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Maribel to talk to you about WIP and CAP.
Thank you, Donna Ann, and welcome everyone. Good morning. Basically, I'm going to tell you a little bit about WIP, our Workforce Investment Program, and CAP, our Construction Apprenticeship Program. The intent of these two programs are basically to work with you once you win that contract to ensure that you're successful hiring local individuals. We want to encourage employment opportunities in Broward County. So we want to work with you as the prime and our community partners to ensure that you're successful hiring for those vacancies. We also want to make sure that we provide these employment opportunities to economically disadvantaged and hard to hire individuals. So here you can see Chapter 19 of our Broward County Code of Ordinances for the Workforce Investment Program. And basically we want to encourage you as a contractor to use CareerSource Broward, which is one of our community partners, or the state Department of Vocational Rehabilitation to hire for the vacancies that you're going to have as part of your project. It is really, really important that you work with us, our staff, to learn what those requirements are and to work with CareerSource Broward. You may wonder what are economically disadvantaged or hard to hire individuals. Well, basically, we want to ensure that working with these community partners, you're going to be able to hire basically residents of Broward County that are low-income residents, residents that are right now possibly receiving federal assistance, residents that have been unemployed for more than 6 months, but they have been actively looking for employment. So we are here to help you recruit for those vacancies that you have in collaboration with CareerSource Broward. Next. So what is the WIP mandate? And we use a lot of acronyms in government. We apologize for that, but the Workforce Investment Program mandate is basically for you. Once you receive that contract, you are committing to working with CareerSource Broward to advertise those vacancies that you will have for at least 5 business days. We will help you by connecting you with CareerSource Broward staff. It's a relatively simple process. For you to do that, you just have to complete an online form, and then CareerSource Broward will proceed to advertise those vacancies. And then, of course, you agree to use your good faith efforts to hire qualified individuals, at least 50%. And again, this is our goal. We would like to work with you to ensure that you are providing opportunities to those candidates that are applying through the CareerSource Broward program to hire at least 50% for the vacancies that you have. And remember, this project and this program is exclusively for vacancies that you will have as part of your contract. Next. WIP determinations. You will already know if your project is WIP eligible or not based on the solicitation. So the solicitation document, as Donna Ann indicated, is basically going to tell you if your contract is subject to the WIP or not. to the Workforce Investment Program. But we want you to understand what the ordinance says. So we provided a copy of the ordinance here, is in the administrative code. This section cover contracts are those contracts that are at least 500,000 in annual payments or more. Is not subject to state or federal requirements. And also that is a construction related service or a cover service. What are cover services? You may wonder. Those are janitorial, maintenance, security services, and more. And again, all this information is spelled out as part of the administrative code. It is also posted on our website. So if you have any questions about the program, feel free to call us and we'll be glad to share additional information. Any construction related contracts, or again, all of those cover services that I just defined are subject to our Workforce Investment Program requirements. Next. This is the Construction Apprenticeship Program, or CAP for short. This is the ordinance. It was first approved by the County Commission back in 2020. However, we did some amendments back in 2021, so the program was effective in 2021. We have been reviewing projects for eligibility since 2021. And basically what we're looking to do as part of the Construction Apprenticeship Program is we're having a lot of challenges, basically recruiting workers for construction related industries. So we have implemented this program in collaboration with Commissioner Geller and our Board of County Commissioners. And we review all projects that are $5 million or more, construction projects, to determine eligibility. So if the project is funded by Broward County or other sources of funding that would allow for us to implement the program, basically you will see that as part of the solicitation as well. So similar to the WIP program, when you review the solicitation will tell you if it's the project has a requirement for construction apprenticeship program or for workforce investment program. Next. So this is basically what the mandate is as relates to the CAP. Basically, we want to ensure that you're using an apprenticeship program that is registered with the Florida Department of Education or the United States Department of Labor. To make it a lot easier for you, just be aware we're here to help you through this process. We have a website that has all this information ready for you. We have all the Broward County registered apprenticeship programs. We have their contact information, their email, their phone number. So we review this information on a quarterly basis and update the information on our website because we want to make it, again, really easy for you. We will be working with you, closely with you, to ensure that you're successful and you understand the requirements of the program. We also allow companies, some larger companies may already have an apprenticeship program as part of their company. So the ordinance also allows for a company-sponsored training program or apprenticeship program if you already have an apprenticeship program as part of your company. And what is the requirement for our CAP program? Basically, your commitment as a bidder at the time of the contract execution is for the participation of apprentices in your contract with at least 12% of the total labor hours have to be performed by apprentices. So that's basically what the requirement of the program is. You need to demonstrate good faith efforts as you're working to implement the program. And then, as I mentioned previously, is for contracts that are $5 million or more. Again, we will work with you to ensure that you have access to the current apprenticeship programs, that you're able to work with them, and that you're able to hire apprentices as part of your program. Next. Now, this is basically an overview of the program from beginning to end. So it's basically the construction apprenticeship programs at a glance. The way it works is at the beginning of the contract, OESBD will work with the user agency to identify the construction projects that are CAP eligible. The solicitation is posted with that requirement as part of the solicitation. The solicitation also includes links to our website, to the registered apprenticeship programs, etc. Because as I said, we want to make it as easy as possible for you to comply with these requirements. The bid responses are reviewed to ensure that you're complying with the requirements of the program and that you're committing to using the apprenticeship programs. Once the bid is awarded, your contract language also includes and makes reference to the construction apprenticeship program requirements. And we will again work with you to provide the list of Broward County registered apprenticeship programs. We will also, as part of the recognition letter that you will receive, it will tell you, as we illustrated earlier, if the project is required to comply with WIP or CAP. And then if it's required to comply with CAP, we will let you know who you need to work with in our office to ensure that you're submitting your monthly reports. This is another requirement of the program, similar to the MUR or monthly utilization reports for the small business programs. The construction apprenticeship program has a requirement for you to provide monthly reports to us on the number of apprentices that you have hired and that are currently working on your project. Broward County has a contract with LCP Tracker, so you won't have to pay for using a LCP Tracker. That is something that Broward County is paying for. So you're able to submit your reports using LCP Tracker, and we'll provide training to you on how to submit that information. And that's basically the end of the program. We continue to monitor your project while the project is active to ensure that you continue to use apprentices. If you're experiencing any challenges, please contact our office. We will be working with you to ensure that we address your challenges or your concerns. And then when the contract closes out, we will be evaluating, of course, the compliance with the program. And basically that provides an overview of both the WIP and the CAP program. But I really want to stress how important it is that you work with our office. Both programs, the WIP and the CAP, we are here to work with you to ensure that not only you understand what the requirements are, but to ensure that you're successful complying with the programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Maribel. Okay, that brings us to the next touch point that the prime vendor and OESBD's small business development section are going to interconnect on. And that, as Maribel just mentioned, is a CBE monthly utilization report. We also refer to them as MURs. These are to be submitted by the 10th of every month to OESBD. We have a designated mailbox. It is sbcomp@broward.org. And we ask that you copy the specialist as well, the small business development specialist, that is, as well as the Broward County project manager when you submit those MURs. Now, I know many prime vendors are used to having a checklist with their payment applications when they submit it. And one of the items listed on the pay app in most instances is a copy of the monthly utilization report. And that's fine. And you still need to meet that requirement. However, I want to emphasize that if you're submitting a pay app and there's a delay or it's kicked back, and let's say you submitted a pay app in January, it got returned to you, you submitted it in February. It goes through, maybe you don't submit another one until April, whereas that might work and be on the trajectory that you need to for the project manager. We need it every month. So it would have been January, February, March. And if there are no new payments, we still need to know. And it's actual payments made, not anticipated payments or invoiced payments. So you're always reporting to us the latest actual payments that you have received as a prime vendor from Broward County, as well as that you've paid to your CBE firms. This is a sample monthly utilization report. We've got some tips on the left side. The good news is this video is being recorded. So if you're trying to take notes, don't worry. You don't have to transcribe everything, but I'm going to call out some of the highlights for you. If you look to the far right of my screen, you'll see we've broken the form into two sections, the top and the bottom section. That corresponds to the notes in green on the left. So the report number is sequential. Every month you have a new report, that number needs to go up by 1. The CBE commitment percentage is subject to change throughout the life of your contract, but it is going to start out to be the overall commitment based on the letters of intent that you submitted. So if you've got 5 CBE firms, and each of them are performing 5% for a total of 25%. We would need to see each CBE firm listed here, and the row across is what's used for each vendor. And if you need another page, feel free to go ahead and use more than one sheet to reflect all the certified firms that you'll be using. In the row below, the contract number, this is really important. This is actually Broward County's contract number. Remember, this form is submitted by the prime vendor. So this is going to be the number that's on your contract agreement with the county. The contract amount is going to be the estimated contract amount that you've been awarded. When we track it, we actually track from the initial term. So if you have an initial contract that's with a 3-year term and 2 1-year renewal options, we're initially looking at that 3-year dollar amount. We don't start tagging in the optional 1-year terms because they're just that, they're optional. The prime vendor or the county may decide not to exercise those options, and we don't want to overstate the contract amount because the SBD section, small business development, is also tracking that contract amount, and it impacts our overall calculations. So that's something to keep in mind. The amount paid to the prime right here, that is a cumulative dollar amount, and it's going to override itself every month. It keeps increasing for every month that the prime gets a new payment. The project description is actually the project name, the name on the contract amount, and tip, the contract number and the project name are also on the recognition letter that's sent to the prime vendor as well as to its CBE firms. The project completion date is the date as you know it, that the project is expected to be completed. Things happen throughout the life of a contract. It's possible for that date to later change. As the contract amount increases, either through change orders or amendments that the prime is aware of, we want you to go ahead and update that amount on your form. Similarly, with the contract completion date, if you know when it's scheduled to end and you get additional time tagged onto your contract, go ahead and update that field. The period ending date, it is usually almost always the last date of the month that you're reporting. So if this MUR is being submitted for the month of January, and remember, you submit it technically a month after you've made the payments. So this report, if it's for the month of January, would be due to our office by the 10th of February. The period ending date would be January 31st, 2024. If it was for the month of February, you'd submit it by March 10th, and the period ending date this year would be February 29th, 2024. The prime contractor's name goes here in the field, prime contractor, and the contact person that you're going to list on the MUR, their email, phone number, is going to be the person that if we have questions about the firms listed here, as well as any of the payments listed, that's the person that we're going to be contacting. The form needs to be signed, dated, and the title of the person who signed it needs to be issued. Tip, if you have 10 CBE firms and you only start out your project with 2 of them, you still need to list all 10 on the MUR. Every firm that's approved, that's a part of your team that we got letters of intent for at the time that you were awarded your contract, and these letters of intent are usually exhibits to your contract agreement, they all need to be listed here. We don't want a surprise, and it's happened a couple of times, because we do look at these MURs and we're tracking them. You've got 4 firms, and all of a sudden, 1 month, you send the MUR, and there's either a 5th firm or one of your 4 is gone, and a new firm suddenly appears. That is a violation of the program, actually, and you need to talk to us, communicate with us when you have issues with your vendors, and you need to make a change. You need to get this in writing before you actually can effect that change. So before you terminate a vendor, you want to reach out and let us know the reasons that you want to terminate them, and we'll go ahead and we'll work with you, provided there's good cause to do so. And if the certified firm, if they're initiating the termination, it's a much faster process, but just be aware, we do check. We're going to ask the firm in question, are you aware that the prime wants to terminate you? Do you agree with the reasons? And if not, state why not. And we'll also inform the Broward County project manager. The columns going down are pretty self-explanatory for the first few. The CBE firm's name, the address for each firm, the description of work is a scope of work being performed on this specific contract. A firm can be certified to provide multiple services, but what we're tracking and what we're interested in is what they're doing on your specific contract that you're reporting on the MUR. The original agreed price is going to be the subcontract dollar amount for each sub that you have committed to paying them for the services they're providing under the contract. If for some reason there is additional scope, additional services, that dollar amount increases, or it's possible it could decrease if there's a deductive change order to the project. Whatever that change is, the original agreed price stays stagnant. It doesn't move. But the column that says revised agreed price, that can be updated as needed. And don't be surprised if we reach out and we ask for additional information. If we saw 1 month, the original agreed price was 500,000, and then the next month it's listed as 100,000 under the revised. The percentage of work completed today. Okay, this one, if you haven't been paying close attention to this form so far, I want you to really, really hone in on this particular column. I'm going to give you an example just to make my point clearer. The percentage of work completed to date is not based on the physical completion of the work out in the field. So if we were building a 4-story building, the first floor goes in, that would be 25, the second 50, 75 for the third, and 100 for the fourth. It's not in phases of physical work completed. It's actually based on the percentage of the contract amount that's been paid divided by the total contract value that will be earned at the end. So in other words, it's this far right column, amount paid to date to each sub, divided by the more current of the two. If it's the original agreed price and it never changed, it's going to be amount paid to date divided by original agreed price. If that original agreed price increased or decreased, it would be amount paid to date divided by revised agreed price. So it's the percentage of the overall contract for the CVE that's been paid to date. That's what goes here in this column. The amount paid to date this period, the amount paid this period, it's a snapshot of the dollars paid in the specific month. So if you have a sub and you paid them $100 in January, this dollar amount will say $100. If you paid them $200 in February, this dollar amount will say $200 when you submit the February report. The amount paid to date is similar to that of the amount paid to the prime. It's cumulative, it's a running tally. So in the month of January, amount paid this period is 100, amount paid to date is 100. In the month of February, remember we paid $200, the amount paid to date would say $300. So that's pretty much a breakdown of the fields in the form. If you have problems understanding or remembering, you have turnover in your company, feel free to reach out to us. Our direct line is 954-357-6400. We'll identify the specialist that's been assigned to your contract, and you can schedule a meeting. They'll be happy to review these fields with whomever is the person in charge of MURs within your company. This form is not the same as the form on the previous page. This is actually the final monthly utilization report. The fields are almost identical to the previous MUR. The only difference is this MUR is submitted when you're ready to report that you've received your final payment based on the last payment application or invoice that you've submitted to the county. So it gives us a heads up. The project is just about ready to be done. If there is any retainage that's been held, that would be the last thing to be issued. And so we'll start talking to the Broward County project manager to see exactly when this project is going to be closed out. This is what the MUR looks like when it's filled in. We felt very clever. Do you guys see this? Anonymous enterprises. Anyways, I liked it, so I thought I'd mention it. The point of filling this one out is just to highlight as an example, if the prime vendor is a CBE certified prime and only has CBE certified subcontractors working with it on a contract, tip, the amount paid to prime should be the same as the amount paid to all the CBEs, because if you notice, Anonymous Enterprises is also listed as a CBE being used to meet the overall commitment. So when you're CBE certified prime, just keep in mind, make sure the math makes sense that you're reporting. So the total to the CBEs, if you're also a part of the CBEs being used to meet your commitment, cannot be greater than the total dollar amount that the prime vendor reports that they've been paid. Moving on to the next screen, just as a summary. What do we do with these MURs, you might be wondering? Well, aside from taking a look at them every month, and we do take a look at them every month, it lets us know how you're using your CBE firms, when they're being engaged, and we're monitoring not just for your overall cumulative commitment to all of your CBEs, we're also monitoring to see how you're doing with the individual commitment. Remember, when you submitted those letters of intent at the time that you were awarded the contract, you made a commitment if you used more than one CBE to utilize more than one CBEs for a specific percentage. So we're looking at that as well. If we notice that there's a dip in attainment, we're going to reach out. Don't be surprised if you get an email from us asking. We know that the level of participation is going to go up and down throughout the life of the contract as your CBEs are engaged. But if it's trending south and we're noticing that it's not increasing and we're getting to maybe the 50, 60%, and you don't have CBEs that are doing trades that are in the finishes, we're going to ask for a plan of action. We want to know what's going on, what's the reason for the attainment shortfall, and how do you plan to fix it. We also will issue a notice of violation and a notice to cure in reverse order. We do the notice to cure first and the notice of violation. These are also separate from those that the project manager may issue. Typically, we're going to talk about enforcement and we'll delve a little bit deeper into those. We do payment verifications with the MURs that you send to us. So we trust, but we verify. Typically, it's around the 25, 50, 75%, and then at contract closeout. If there is an issue, a dispute, a concern, we will do a spot check in between. So don't just hold us to the 25, 50, 75 in completion. We can do it in between as well. For your convenience, the links on this slide connect to a fillable blank PDF form on our OESBD website. So it's public facing and you can use it at will. It's a lot easier than trying to squeeze your text into the MUR exhibit in your contract. And if you, for some reason, the link isn't working or you can't access it, give us a call. We can give you a copy and it's a lot easier to use. Payment disputes. 9 out of 10 times when there's a payment dispute, we find it's not intentional. Sometimes it's errors in the prime's bookkeeping. It's an error in the CBE's bookkeeping. But regardless, we're here to help. And if there is a payment issue that's reported to us, don't be surprised when you hear from us because as the prime vendor, you're issuing the payments. We're going to be asking for proof of payment if there's a dispute that needs to be resolved and we can't get to the bottom of it. Per the Business Opportunity Act, again, CBEs must be paid within 15 calendar days of the prime's receipt of payment from Broward County. The other times that we'll get requests for intervention will be utilization disputes. And a big part of helping to resolve this, and I emphasize emphatically, Broward County, while we're not a party to the agreement between the prime and the sub, we are not authorized to give you legal advice. A lot of times, some of the disputes can be resolved by what's in your subcontract agreement. So if you started working on a contract with a prime vendor, you could have known each other for 10 years and been in business. It's always good until it's not. And then what do you have to fall back on? So at the beginning of the agreement, get used to requesting or get used to having some document. It doesn't have to be a 20-page contract. In the same way that you hire professionals to do your bookkeeping, it's always a good idea to have a legal opinion from someone. If you're not clear on what the terms of your agreement says, ask somebody, a lawyer preferably. OESBD won't be able to weigh in on that. I'm going to tell you emphatically. But if it's a violation of the Business Opportunity Act, that's pretty straightforward, and that we can say whether that's occurring or not. Don't wait till the end of the contract to reach out for help. Again, our number is 954-357-6400. Believe it or not, we try to help prime vendors as well, even if they're not certified when they have payment issues. And we've done in the past. You may ask why. Well, remember, it's a paid when paid kind of scenario. If you're not getting paid, our certified firms aren't getting paid. So if we can help to coordinate a meeting, which we refer to as mediation, not in the true legal sense, but to coordinate a meeting where the parties can come together and have the opportunity to discuss an issue and perhaps find a solution, we're always available and willing to do it. I already discussed the payment verifications. I just want to call your attention to the last bullet. Nothing settles a payment dispute like valid proof of payment. Get into the habit when you have your contract. Some of these contracts I know run for long periods of time. It could be several years. You could have multiple subs. Just keep a copy of the cancel check. You never know when you're going to need it. Honest mistakes are made, but nothing settles a payment dispute like valid proof of payment. And it will squash a payment dispute very quickly. Typically, when we reach out and there are issues, we'll ask for the subcontractor to verify payments received. That we generally do within 3 business days. If there are issues, meaning the sub says, well, I didn't get that money that the prime said that they submitted to me or that they paid to me. And we might go back and we'll say to the prime, hey, the sub is disputing receiving this amount. Sometimes it's as simple as the check that the prime included in its MUR was still in the mail and didn't get to the sub until the following month. And we've had instances where it's fairly simple and easy to resolve. However, get into the habit of retaining proof of payment throughout your contract. Failure to respond to our request for information, whether for the prime or for the CBE, could result in a notice to cure. Of all the things to get a notice to cure for, failure to communicate shouldn't be one. We're here to help. And the more you communicate with us, I think the easier the process will be. Desired changes to your CBE team. This is a really important one. And in terms of best practices, we said as a part of this series, we'd share best practices with both our prime vendors and our subs. This is a big one. So desired changes to your team, what does that mean? So when you got your contract, when it was awarded to you by the county, you already had a proposed group, one or more, of CBE firms that you are going to use, or if you yourself are CBE certified, you knew exactly how you were going to attain the commitment, the participation that you committed to. And something else I want to emphasize, a tip. For OESBD, for Broward County, when we establish a goal on a contract that's solicited, let's say it's a 20% goal, when you respond, when all vendors respond to that solicitation and they propose how they intend to meet that goal, at the time of award, the goal goes out the window. It's the commitment, the documentation that you submitted regarding how you intend to perform under the contract and the CBEs that you intend to use. That's what the prime is held to. So we start monitoring the commitment. That's what's in your recognition letter at the time of contract award. So the changes to your team refers to adding or removing a vendor that was a part of that original team. When you add a vendor, that typically results in an increase to your commitment. When you remove a vendor, we'll always ask you for an explanation as to why the vendor needs to be terminated. And we'll also ask you for a plan, like, what are you going to do? If you remove a vendor, that participation goes with the vendor, or the remaining services left to be reported need to be performed by someone, or you're going to end up with a shortfall. That can be resolved. Is there sufficient scope by increasing a pre-existing vendor's services, their committed participation percentage, or bringing in a new firm to pick up the remaining percentage that the firm you're terminating is going to leave on the table. So that's pre-award that we're looking at. Post-award is pretty much the same thing. You need to receive written prior communication before making any changes to your CBE team from the OESBD director. Remember, towards the beginning of the presentation, I gave you some context and I explained that the small business development section, the compliance team, not only recommends the goal and reviews the responses and sees who's compliant with that requirement or not, they're aware of who your team is at the time of award. So if you make a change to your team, you're changing the records that you have, and we have the original records. That's going to create an issue at the end. Aside from being a violation of the program, you want to communicate with us. We will accommodate and we will help you, especially if there's good cause to do so. We can also help to save you from making a potential mistake that's going to cost you at the end. Perhaps what you really want to do is a modification where you realize the scope for one firm is less than you thought at the time of award and another has increased. You're not getting rid of anybody, but maybe what you really want to do instead of adding a new firm is shuffling the commitment between your existing firms. If you're not meeting your commitment, you got to think about whether or not you want to just add a new CBE to your team, because just adding a new CBE without there being new services added to the contract means you're going to increase your commitment. So if you're not meeting that commitment, you just push that goalpost even further away from you. Just something to think about. Now we're going to talk about enforcement. There are typically 3 areas of enforcement: notice to cure, notice of violation, and liquidated damages. The notice to cure comes from an alleged or perceived violation of the act, meaning it looks like it could be, it's going down that path, we're not entirely sure. So we send you a notice to cure and we explain in that notice to cure, hey, this is what we see that's happening. Either your participation has been consistently below your committed level or getting close to the end of the contract. You're not paying your subcontractors timely. You're doing the work that was supposed to be performed by one of your CBEs with a non-CBE firm, or you're doing it yourself, or you're using firms and you forgot to get prior written approval. These are somewhat curable. There are instances, however, if the violation is egregious, the act says we can actually skip the notice to cure and go straight to the notice of violation. The notice to cure is typically issued by the small business development manager, which is myself. The notice of violation will come from our director or our assistant director. The notice of violation is where we've spoken, we've communicated, either you failed to respond, and you have 5 business days within which to respond to the notice to cure. You also have 5 business days within which to respond to a notice of violation. But the idea is to not let it escalate to the point that a notice to cure becomes a notice of violation. Can I tell you, of all the reasons to get a notice of violation, a delinquent MUR is not one of them. So communicate with us. We're not going to issue a notice of violation without cause, but you would still have 5 business days within which to explain to us why what we have as our perceived information or course of action is incorrect, or give us the additional information that we need to know. Communication is key. The third area has to do with liquidated damages. I mentioned these before. It's a part of the act and it is an enforcement tool. This, however, unlike notice to cure and notice of violation, comes towards the very end of the contract. The LDs are assessed at the end. The act says that the liquidated damages cannot exceed 10% of the contract value, but will be 50% of the shortfall. So they need to be within that sweet spot. The example on the screen shows a $1 million contract with a CBE goal of 25%. At the end of the contract, the CBE attainment, which is dollars paid to CBE divided by dollars paid to Prime, is 200,000. If you look at what the goal was, for technical purposes, this should say commitment, but it's how it's written in the act. It says goal. There's a $50,000 shortfall. So then we get to the section of the act that says, okay, $50,000, 50% of the shortfall, not to exceed 10% of the contract value. So in this case, it's $25,000 and it cannot exceed the contract value, 10% of the contract value. So we could assess liquidated damages in that instance. You don't want the liquidated damages and we're not going to assess them. They're a last resort, frankly. And that is like flagrantly not making any good faith efforts to comply with the program requirements. But you don't want to be in that position. Our director went through vendor responsibilities and vendor rights yesterday and wanted us to remind you, understand your contract and your subcontract agreements. If there are terms you're not clear on, you definitely want to get clarification upfront. Be mindful of your contractual obligations. Be familiar with the requirements of our Business Opportunity Act. When you play a sport or you play a game, in order to be successful, you need to know the rules, right? Your contract is essentially the guidelines to how you need to function and execute the work that you've been hired to perform. Similarly, the Business Opportunity Act sets the framework for those things that you're required to do and not do in relation to the CBE firms that are on the contract. Be mindful of prompt payment. 15 days, 15 calendar days within receipt of payment from the county. If you pay sooner than that, it'll never be a problem. If you pay later than that, we're going to start asking why. If there's a delay that's on the county side, the prime isn't penalized for it if the prime hasn't been paid. But if you received your payment, the expectation is that you're then going to turn around, if that payment included work that was successfully completed by your CBE, and pay them. That is deemed good faith efforts. Keep in mind, any changes to your team have to first be approved in writing by the OESBD director. We encourage the prime vendors, build relationships. Doing really well on a contract and communicating with the project manager, communicating with OESBD, having a good relationship with your CBE firms. Believe it or not, the project manager and OESBD are part of an evaluation process at the end of the contract. And we do put in notes that indicate, were you timely with your MUR? We being OESBD in this case. Did you pay your subcontractors timely? Did you deal with disputes that arose in a fair and reasonable manner? So there is going to be a record of your performance. So keep that in mind. Sometimes the work that you do on a past project is a good referral for future work. It's always competitive. It's not like somebody can give it to you, but it does make a difference when the contract is awarded and the project manager has confidence that the prime knows what's expected. If there's issues, immediately inform, especially if it's a small business related issue, immediately inform OESBD. We're here to help. As soon as we know about the issue, we'll try to work with you. If it's a non-small business related issue, then of course, your point of contact is your project manager. Both the project manager and OESBD, however, need to be informed if there's a small business related issue. I'm wrapping up, but I wanted to take the time to remind you about your certification status. When you're certified as a CBE and you're on a contract that's already been awarded, and let's say you're doing really well, you've had multiple contracts, and you somehow, when you're ready to renew, realize you've exceeded the personal net worth requirement, the 1.32 million, or if you're doing construction, you've exceeded the average gross receipts over 3 years, you're averaging more than $9 million. We don't penalize the CBE or the prime vendor. So you're eligible to be counted for the remainder of that contract that you're on. However, you cannot then present yourself as being CBE certified and eligible for any new opportunities that you weren't already a part of. So be mindful of your anniversary date. It's just like a wedding anniversary. It's the same date on the same month of every year by which you need to submit your continuing eligibility documentation. You can't actually complete your renewal before 30 days prior to your anniversary date, but our recommendation is set a tickler on your calendar 60 days out. Start looking for those tax returns. We need the first page. Go ahead and start looking at your assets and your liabilities. We're going to need an updated personal net worth worksheet. Log into Access Broward and upload that information. For the CBE program, it's all online now, so there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to maintain your certification. At this point, I'm going to open up for questions and answers. And I should add, we do have a chat and we've got Q&A. I'm going to go ahead and see if Vanetta, do you mind unmuting yourself and letting me know what's in the Q&A?
Sure. We have one question in the Q&A right now. It comes from Brian Coldwell. Does the WIP mandate for hiring vacancies apply only to the construction team or to the design team as well?
And I can take that one, Donan. That applies to all vacancies as part of the contract or the project. So for WIP, basically the goal is to work with you to hire working with Careers of Broward on all vacancies, not just the design team, not just the construction team, but all the vacancies that you have as part of the project. And remember, this is not just at the beginning of the project, it's for the duration of the project. So we want to work with you to advertise all vacancies at the beginning of the project, in the middle, and at the end. Hope we answer your question, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you,
Brian
Maribel.
confirmed that we answered his question.
Awesome. Are there any other questions or comments in the chat? We really want you to put your questions in the Q&A box, but if there are any that haven't been answered that are in the chat, would you please let me know, Vanetta?
I haven't seen any questions in the chat area.
Okay.
And there have been a few reminders in the chat for folks to enter their questions into the Q&A area as well.
Thank you.
And Donan, I can expand, and I know somebody just added another one, but I wanted to expand a little bit on WIP. Basically, the way we verify and ensure compliance with the Workforce Investment Program is we do communication to all of the primes once a year. It happens at the beginning of the year. You receive a notification from our office between January and March of every year, where we ask you questions related to the Workforce Investment Program. And the questions are, do you work with Career Source Broward? How many vacancies do you have? How many vacancies you hired for using Career Source Broward, etc. So that's how we verify compliance with the Workforce Investment Program. And you receive communication from our office annually at the beginning of the year while the contract is active.
Okay, I expanded the Q&A. I see that they're coming in. There was one from Brooke Bradshaw. Hello, I recently won my first bid with the county, but I did not receive the recognition letter. They told me to reach out to OESBD regarding that. Who can I email? Well, Brooke, you're definitely in the right place. If you're responding as a prime vendor, what we would need to know, and you can put it in the Q&A or in the chat, let us know the name of the contract in question. That way we can look it up on our end. If you have the contract number, the Broward County contract number, or the Broward County project name, we can definitely look that up for you. If you don't have it handy, feel free to give us a call after this webinar at 954-357-6400. Just ask for me, Donna Ann Knapp, and I'll work with you. We'll figure out who your specialist is, and we'll ensure that you get a copy of that letter. Okay, Vanetta, I think this one might be for you. How long will this tutorial be available for the links and samples of the documentation?
Hopefully, everyone is able to download the chat on their device. Once we receive the final recording, we will upload it to our YouTube channel. And there it will remain.
Okay, so the good news is the links should remain live. We do have a YouTube page, so it'll be uploaded. Just give us a little time. But all 3 of the sessions that we're doing, we'll have another one tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. They'll be on our YouTube page. And I see a question, I know the name, from our small business supervisor, and he wants me to go ahead and expand on payment verifications with CBEs. So I mentioned before that the monthly utilization report is pretty much a starting point for a payment verification process. Of course, a CBE can contact us directly and ask for assistance with a delinquent payment. But the way that we do it is we're going to look at the MUR, provided that there are no technical math errors with the monthly utilization report, your numbers add up in the vertical column. We're going to then go ahead and issue a payment verification to the CBEs that you've committed to using under your contract. And again, this will be the reported payments on the monthly utilization report. So the far right column that had said the payments reported to date, that's the amount we're going to verify with each of your CBE firms. One of the slides had a sample payment verification form. So the form itself basically says, John Q. Contractor reported to our office that they paid your firm $500,000. please indicate whether or not, oh, for the period, and we'll tell you through what month and what year. It doesn't mean you got paid in that specific month. It means that's the total payments through that date. So we'll ask you to verify yes or no. There's a checkbox field or a little line that you can check yes or no. If you check yes, that means you've agreed with the dollars that were reported through the period. And if you check no, or you put an X saying no, there are 2 lines below on the verification form. And of course, we're going to ask for an explanation. So sometimes what could have happened is when we do the verification, the prime may have already not submitted a report to us, but already made a new payment to the CBE. So the CBE could say, no, I actually got more than that amount. And we'll circle back with the prime vendor just to double check, what happened. They'll say another check was issued or whatever the explanation is. The reverse of that scenario can also happen where the prime will say, I paid the CBE $500,000. And the CBE can say, no, I invoiced for $500,000. I've only been paid $10,000 to date. That's an issue for us because it overstates the level of participation that the firm has done for their overall total contract, subcontract amount. So we're then going to turn around and ask the prime for proof of payment. Failure to provide proof of payment by the prime, which is why I said it's really important to keep records of payments issued to your CBEs throughout the life of your contract. It's a really good best practice to have, not just for a Broward County contract, not just for the CBE program, but in general. And then we're going to ask for proof of payment. When you provide us copies of the canceled checks or proof that you've paid the CBE in question, the issue is resolved. We update our records accordingly. If it turns out that the CBE was right, and let's say they're doing work for you on more than one contract, but your bookkeeper combined both payments, we're going to ask you to revise those monthly utilization reports to reflect the actual payments made for the contract being reported on. Let's see. I hope that answered the question. I'm going to move on to the next one that I see is what happens when cash payments are made from subs. Okay, Miguel, I think I'm going to need a little bit more interaction with you on that one. I'll take a stab at it. So in this day and age, especially if you want proof of payment, most payments are done via wire transfer or through a check, because that way you have a paper trail. I'm not sure in what scenario you would typically make a cash payment to a sub, but it does say from sub. I'm not sure if that's a typo. The sub should not be paying the prime money. That's not the typical nature of how that contract is structured. In compliance and in other areas, we were familiar with the term kickback. If a prime agrees to use or commits to using a CBE as a part of its team, that itself is enough of a commitment. The CBE shouldn't then turn around and be required to pay the prime money. So that wouldn't be that typical structure. Miguel, if I didn't answer your question, or if you wanted to go a little bit more in depth, feel free to follow up and we'll take another stab at it. I see a question from Brooke. New contract to stop. Oh, got it, Brooke. Let me go ahead and that will be in our Q&A, but I'm just going to jot down the number 7107 Bravo 1. All right, Brooke. That's good to have. The only thing we're going to need from you now is how to get in touch with you. So go ahead and call me after. I have a way of looking up that contract and I can help you, no problem. So 954-357-6400. Anonymous attendee says, when a subcontractor pays his or her workers with a 1099 or worker misclassification, what are the consequences? Okay, so when you pay your worker with a 1099, so independent contractors are usually what I know as being 1099 vendors. So if you hire a CBE subcontractor to participate under your contract with you, They're a separate entity. They need to have independent ownership and control. So there shouldn't be any sharing of employees. There shouldn't be any co-sharing of resources. We shouldn't see that your project manager is also the project manager for that CBE. So you technically wouldn't give them a 1099 as an independent contractor. You'd be paying them separately as an external third-party vendor, just like you would hire somebody else. So the consequences of, I guess, not treating them in the true spirit and intent of the program would call into question ownership issues and control issues. That could result in possible recommendation for debarment of the prime vendor by the director of the OESBD to the director of the purchasing division. It depends on where the violation lies. I would need a little bit more information, but the short answer is for egregious violations of the program, both for a certified and for a non-certified firm, recommendation for debarment could be submitted by our agency to the purchasing director. Ultimately, it is the purchasing director's determination as to how that will happen. If the firm is certified, they could lose their certification status with OESBD. So there are a couple of different ways that that could go. Anonymous, hopefully I did answer your question. If not, feel free to reply back.
There are a few questions from Alka Scott in the chat. I will read the first one. Is there a list of contracts to choose from, and how does one submit?
Okay, so hey, really good question. I actually have a slide. And if our friends in purchasing were watching, they would be cheering. So I'm not sure if you're aware. Thanks, Miguel. I'm not sure if you're aware, but Broward County is getting ready to launch a new web-based procurement platform that's going to be powered by Bonfire. It's called BPro. And in spring, we should be transitioning from Periscope S2G, which is our current procurement system, to BPro. So the list that you're referring to, every competitive solicitation that Broward County issues, and that would be anything above $100,000 in value, is going to be advertised on Periscope S2G, and eventually that will be replaced by BPro. So that's where you'll find opportunities for new and upcoming contracts. It's also where you can research past contracts to see how firms submitted bids in response to similar solicitations for services that you're interested in. Our director yesterday mentioned it's a good homework tool to know what the competition is doing. Public records are also a resource that's available to you. Depending on the heft of the information, there may be a fee beyond a certain number of pages or certain number of hours, but if it's a small document that's readily available, that can be provided to you at no charge. But we have coordinators that can provide additional information on that. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you, Donna Ann. She also has a second question. She received an email saying that she wants a contract. How do I find out what type of contract it is?
Okay. When you read that first part, it sounded like those spam email messages that you get that tells you you just won money. Typically, when you get notified that you've been awarded a contract, and remember, we're Broward County government, we're separate from Broward County schools. Usually the purchasing agent that's assigned to the contract would be the person who's sending that notification, but it'll definitely have information regarding the county and the contract in question. So let's say it's a bid. It would have been competitively advertised. Vendors would have competed. The bid results are posted. They're on the purchasing website. So you'd already kind of have an idea of if you're in the running or not. But if you want to find out more, you can give us a call. I'm not sure what the letter was that you got. If it was for a dollar amount that's under $10,000. Let's say it's an informal quote or an informal bid process. The county has designated persons called county agency buyers or CABs. And if it's under $100,000, they're able to do an informal procurement process. They'll get 3 quotes, 3 independent quotes to ensure that there is some competition in the process. And they can directly communicate and hire the small business that is deemed to be the successful vendor. That could be the scenario that you're describing, because if it's a more formal process where it's a competitive solicitation that's posted on our procurement website, it'll definitely have a lot more information and it won't be a surprise. You'll know ahead of time that you're being awarded a contract. I hope that answers your question.
She did respond in the chat. Thank you, Donna Ann. I see no further questions.
Okay, thank you. I do have a couple of extra slides. We are almost done, but this was a slide I was talking about just now. The QR code is active. As I mentioned before, Broward County is switching to BPro, which is powered by Bonfire. So if you have not already done so, please use the cameras on your phone. Go ahead and capture the website address. You can either use a QR code on the screen, or you can go to broward.org/purchasing. There's additional information about the new system. It's free to register as a Broward County vendor. You don't have to be a certified business to do business with Broward County, but you must be a registered vendor. So if you haven't already done so, you can get a head start. Go ahead and register in BPro. Now, speaking of procurement, we also have one-stop procurement shopping under the regional marketplace offered by the South Florida Anchor Alliance. Broward County is a member or an anchor in the alliance. And what it is it offers procurement opportunities from the 11 anchors that are currently a part of this program. So instead of logging on to each of our individual sites, you register your company, QR code is active. And once you're a registered vendor, you'll be able to see the individual solicitations from each of the anchors. And just to give it some perspective, each anchor at a minimum does approximately $1 billion worth of procurements for goods and services. So it's a really good resource. I wanted to remind everyone, stay connected. We have our Business Assistance Weekly. It's our electronic newsletter. Comes out every Wednesday, a new edition. I heard a rumor there might also be a second one on a Saturday. Vanetta, correct me if I'm wrong, but you'll get hot tips, upcoming contracts. If there's anything that's significant in terms of large projects that we're going to help to do outreach, you'll find it here. You'll also get some tips and advice from our director. He has his own column. So stay tuned. We're also on social media. Stay connected with us. Speaking of upcoming events, we've got 2 on the horizon. These are for our entrepreneurs. It's under the Kaufman Fast Track program, which is also offered through our economic development section. On March 20th, it's going to be at Carver Ranches. It's listening to your business. It is free of charge. And on March 27th at the Weston Branch Library, there'll be another workshop. So the QR codes are on the screen. I'm stalling a little bit so you can take a picture if you need to, but go ahead and register. It is free to do so. And then our signature conference, one of our 2 signature conferences, Broward and Beyond Business, it's coming up. It's that time again. It's going to be on Friday, May 3rd. If you've attended in the past, you know, it's fantastic. It crosses multiple industries. It's not just for small businesses. We've got companies of all sizes. We've got technology. We've got trade. The pull is the small businesses attend for the large businesses that attend, and the large businesses attend for the owners that attend. So we'll usually have participation from county government, from the school board, the hospital districts, many of our local community partners. So go ahead and register. It's free to attend. If you've attended in the past, you're used to us being in another location. So take note, we're going to be at the Broward County Convention Center this year. We won't be at the Signature Grand, which is where we usually have it. Join us tomorrow. It's the last of our 3-part series, and you're in for a treat. Our partners in the Construction Management Development Division are going to be talking about some of the contracts that they have and best practices and expectations to be successful in executing those contracts. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone, and I wish you a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.